Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. So, today we will be discussing the non-market valuations, and in this context we will be talking about the reveal preference method, that is one of the methods under this non-market valuation approaches. So, as you understand that in the last class we discussed about the cost benefit analysis corresponding to the environment. So, that is cost benefit analysis and the environment. So, this lecture is in continuation with the previous lectures related to the cost benefit analysis. So, here we will be focusing on the non-market environmental valuation itself and what are the different methods or approaches in order to value the non-market environmental goods and services, right. So, in this context we will be discussing the what is environmental valuations, then why non-market valuation is necessary. So, what is the urgency because of which we are talking about non-market valuations. Then we will be talking about different approaches for non-market valuations, how we are going to measure this non-market valuation thing. And then we will be discussing what is the specific methods under this non-market valuation, that is reveal preference methods. So, in this context, once we are defining this reveal preference method or what are the different types of reveal preference method, we will be discussing the theoretical background of reveal preference method, what are the typologies or different forms of reveal preference methods that we are using, and what are the merits and limitations of reveal preference methods. So, this is the outline, the overall contents of this current lecture. So, let us discuss from the environmental valuations. So, as you understand from the previous lecture, that is cost benefit analysis corresponding to the environmental context. So, how you are valuing this environmental goods and services, or you are saying this environmental valuations. So, in this context we are taking the approach of the appraisal technique of cost benefit analysis. So, there we can quantify and evaluate the environmental resources by taking into their benefits. We are weighing their usefulness, we are weighing their benefits and costs, and hence we are quantifying and valuing the environmental resources, environmental goods and environmental services. And here when we are saying this, we are weighing the costs and benefits or usefulness of this environmental resources. Here we are saying these resources are of two types, one is your direct use value and the second one is indirect use value. So, when we are saying that this non-market valuations and we are using this usefulness of environmental goods, we are saying these usefulness are divided in two parts, direct use and indirect use, and accordingly we are saying direct use value, the value that we are putting towards the direct use of environmental goods and services. So, this is direct use value, and similarly when we are saying the value we are putting towards the indirect use, that is indirect use value. So, that means in this context we are talking about evaluations. So, what is valuations here? So, just like when we are talking about a market situations, and we can say how you are valuing a particular good that is available in the market, right. So, what you are doing? You are talking about the corresponding prices and the quantity that you want to purchase. So, you can find the value, or that is the valuation of those goods that are available in the market. So, this is economic valuation, but when we are here our concern is not the market valuation of goods and services rather than the non-market economic valuation of goods and services. That means those goods and services which are not available in the market itself. And traditionally when you are saying economic valuations and we are talking about the environmental quality or environmental goods or environmental services. So, we have this method to measure this environmental goods and services. So, that is known as the total economic value. What exactly is this total economic value? We can define it. We can say that when there is a change in the environmental quality, then obviously the individual's well-being or individual's welfare in terms of utility, it will be changed. So, what is our task when we are saying economic valuations? So, if the environmental quality changes, then the individual's well-being will also change. But in economic valuation, our task is to find out that what is the monetary measure of the change in the individual's utility because of change in the environmental quality. And if you are doing this monetary exercise or monetary measurement of change in individual's well-being because of a change in environmental quality, that is known as the total economic value. So, these are the things we have already discussed in the previous lecture. So, I am just trying to refresh the memory that how this environmental valuation is still expanded to different kinds of method in terms of non-market valuations methods. Again, in total economic value, we know that this is composed of two types of values, that one is use values and the second one is non-use values. So, what is use value and what is non-use value, that we have already discussed in the previous classes. But just to sum up, this use value is consisted of direct use values, indirect use values as well as the option use values. Likewise, the non-use value is consisted of two values. The first one is the existence value and the second one is bequest value. So, accordingly we are finding that this total economic value for any environmental change in environmental quality and how this change in environmental quality is leading to change in the individual's welfare. So, in this context now would like to highlight why non-market valuations. So, what is the context here? So, you can just remember the previous lecture, that is the cost benefit analysis. So, there we talked about what is the necessity of this cost benefit analysis. Just to remind you that this cost benefit analysis is nothing but an appraisal technique, and these are always used for appraising the public policies or public projects. And as you understand that in these public policies and public projects, they are designed in such a way that they will be having their impacts generally in order to boost the utility or welfare of the individuals. So, in the context of this cost benefit analysis, what we are trying to appraise? We are trying to appraise these policies, the public policies and projects by measuring the impacts, that how these public policies or projects are impacting the utility of the individuals. And again, when you are saying these policies are having their impacts on individuals' welfare, so these impacts can be like your tangible impacts. So, the public policies can have tangible impacts and simultaneously it can have intangible impacts. So, if the policies or projects, they are having this tangible impact, so it is not difficult to measure because it is tangible, and we are actually concerned about the intangible impacts of these public projects or public policies, that how we are going to actually measure what kind of impacts these public policies or projects they are having on the individual's well-being. And we are focusing the intangible impacts of these public policies. So, when we need to measure the intangible impacts of these public policies or projects on the individual's well-being, then, and we need to express everything in terms of monetary units, obviously it is the common measure for quantifying these impacts, then we need this non-market valuation approach. And as we understand that in case of this public policies, most of these impacts of these policies they are intangible in nature, because if the impacts are tangible, it is easy to measure the impacts on the well-being of the individuals or the society itself. But when the impacts are intangible, it is difficult to measure these impacts. So, therefore, in order to measure this intangible impacts, because it is not actually reflected in the market information. So, this intangible impacts cannot be actually measured in terms of market information like your price or consumption of these goods and services. You cannot, this market information cannot actually be useful in measuring the impacts of these intangible impacts, right. So, that is why these market information are not actually useful in order to measure this intangible impacts of any policy or any projects. So, that means this actual markets cannot be of any help in measuring these impacts of the public policies or public projects, especially the policies or projects when they are having intangible impacts on the individuals. So, that is what that is how we are needing the non-market valuation approaches, right. So, which is beyond the market, where the market is not available. So, now if this is so, these are the scenarios where intangible impacts of policies are there and we need to measure this. So, and there is no stereotype market, then what can be the different approaches or different methods, so that we can measure this intangibility or intangible impacts of this these projects or policies. That is what we need to discuss. We can actually measure this intangible impacts by different approaches which are known as the non-market valuation approaches. We have already briefed what is the non-market valuation approaches. So, in these situations where we are needing the non-market valuation approaches, right, where the markets are not available, generally we are having two broad cases or two broad approaches that are used for estimating the economic value of non-market goods and services, right. So, what are these two approaches, so that we can estimate the economic value of the non-market goods and services? The first approach is known as the rival preference methods, and the second one is known as the stated preference methods. These are the standard measuring approaches for estimating the non-market valuations. So, now let us understand this first approach, that is rival preference methods. So, what exactly is this rival preference method? As the name shows, obviously you need to actually find out from its from the very name of these terminologies, that here the consumers or the individuals, they are revealing their preferences. So, I am here highlighting the word preferences. These preferences are revealed, and by revealing these preferences, then we can measure the non-market valuation of these goods and services, or how to estimate the economic valuation of these non-market goods and services. So, in a nutshell, you can say that here these rival preference method, they are providing a kind of methodologies or approaches, right, for estimating the environmental values, where the consumers and producers, they are obviously making using the consumptions of goods and services, and they are also making the choices so far which kind of production is to be done in the market system. So, here this method is providing a kind of methodologies for estimating these environmental values, and therefore these rival preference methods, they are searching after a market, because this is not the actual market, right, because these environmental goods and services are not traded in the market system. And if you have to estimate the environmental values of these goods and services, right, then we need to have a market which is known as the surrogate markets. So, these surrogate markets, they try to analyze, or you can say infer, the preferences for the non-market goods and services, and it will be actually found out by the past behavior of individuals in the associated market. So, I am again here highlighting this word associated market. So, we are searching the past behavior of individuals or consumers or producers who are exercising their consumption, production behavior over there. So, for choosing the goods and services, which goods and services is to be consumed and which goods and services is to be produced. So, that is what it is not reflected in the actual market or true sense of market, you can say, but it is known as the surrogate markets. In surrogate markets, we are trying to analyze the inferences, the preferences of individuals for non-market goods by analyzing the past behavior of these consumers or individuals in an associated market. So, what exactly is this surrogate markets, and we are searching, or this is a kind of market which is helpful in finding the economic value of these non-market goods and services. So, here this surrogate market, this approach actually searching for a market is a kind of market in which the goods or other factors of productions, they can be transacted, right, and this market observes the environmental benefits or costs that are very frequently the attributes of those goods and services or those factors of productions, right. So, you can say that this surrogate market approach, it is used when we cannot directly estimate the market prices of those environmental goods and services, because there is no stereotype or there is no typical market for it, but we are trying to find out those markets where some attributes of these environmental goods and services are traded in different forms of goods and services. So, you can say that in the absence of a true market for these environmental goods and services, we can gather the information from the related markets where related goods and services are traded over there, and we use this market information, right, to determine the use values of the non-marketed goods. So, here we just want to highlight that this decision that which one is to consume, right. So, this decision or this behavior on that which goods and which services are to be consumed, this behavior reveals the consumer's preferences for this typical environmental non-marketed goods. That is why in this way we are actually searching, or we are actually creating, or in a kind of market is created which is known as the surrogate market here. So, we can say that these reveal preference methods, they are based on the observation of individual choices or actual choices. So, we will be having some examples once we are done with the very theoretical portions of this method. So, here we just want to convey that these non-market goods are not traded in the typical market. That is why we are saying non-market valuations, but they are related in conjunction to goods that are traded in the markets. That means some attributes of these goods and services, they are similar. That is why they are related in the conjunction to the goods that are already traded in the markets in the form of different goods. So, that is why we need to actually have this example to make this definition clear, that here for this non-market valuations or the non-market valuation of these goods and services or the economic valuation of non-market goods and services, we are trying to explore a market, right, and we understand that there is no market, direct market for these goods and services, so that the transaction can happen. We do not find anyone. So, in order to search for these the markets where these goods and services can have some option to be traded, right. So, in this exercise we are trying to find those markets where some attributes of these non-market environmental goods they are having in terms of the consumptions of any other goods and services, right, And these any other goods and services, they do have these attributes of this environmental goods and services, and these any other goods and services which are traded in the markets, so they do have all market informations. By using those market information, we are actually trying to infer it. So, we can have this example. So, what is this pictures about? So, you can say that this pictures actually talking about the importance of aquaguard, right. So, what is the function of this aquaguard? Obviously, when you are preferring or when you are choosing for the quality of the water, drinking water, then you can actually explore is there any mechanism to have this better quality of water or pure drinking water. That is why you explore some mechanisms that is available in the market. So, this is what, let us say this is aquaguard. So, after looking to these two pictures of aquaguard, the importance of aquaguard and the importance of pure drinking water. So, you can have these questions in your mind. The first can be, how do you value pure water or water quality? That is why. So, if you are really valuing the pure water or you are really concerned about the water quality and it will be actually impacting your health or family's health, then you will be seeking for some mechanism, some instruments. So, that is in form of this aquaguards. Our second questions related to this can be, how do you value the impact of water quality on the human health or maybe your family health. So, if these are the questions that is actually posing you, right, that these are the questions which are the troublesome questions, we are searching for different mechanisms. So, how to have the pure water quality or how to maintain the health by maintaining or by using the good water quality or pure water quality for drinking purposes. So, this example is clear from these two pictures. Let us narrate this example, that when an individual purchases this water purification systems, aquaguard RO. So, it is when he or she is purchasing this system, he or she is displaying or revealing its preferences, right. So, this purchasing behavior is a preference, and this purchasing behavior reveals the minimum amount the person is willing to pay for quality water or for improved water quality, right. So, that is why he or she is interested in purchasing this and this this purification system, water purification system, and already purchased it. So, here what you are emphasizing is the behavior. Which behavior? This purchasing behavior of this aquaguard RO. These preferences, this behavior or the preferences of the individuals, it reveals the minimum willingness to pay, the minimum amount of payment for getting the pure or improved water quality. And as we understand that this pure improved water quality, it is not transacted in the usual market, there is no market for it. But when you are purchasing this instrument which helps us to get this pure water quality, so this is your behavior and it is revealed. So, although we do not have any market which is where you can trade the water quality, right, but we do have some instruments or some machines which can be used, or when you are purchasing the same, then indirectly it is actually referring that you are interested or how much you are valuing the improved water quality, or what is the importance of improved water quality for you, and that is why you are valuing it. So, this reveal preference method, that is why it is known as the household production approach. So, what is household production function approach? So, generally if you go to the theory of household production approach, then you will be finding that generally in the households, let us suppose say you are you wish to consume pizza at home, right. So, that is why although you are interested for pizza, you want to consume it, you do not have. You cannot actually directly, you do not want to directly purchase pizza from the market, from different vendors, you do not want. So, what you are interested that you need to consume, you wish to consume a homemade pizza. So, your interest, your preference is pizza. For this reason, if you have to make it at home, what do you want? Obviously, you need the ingredients for preparations. When you are needing, so that is why what you are purchasing? You are purchasing wheat, you are purchasing vegetables and other materials that are useful for making pizza. So, what is the household production approach? It states? It states that when you are needing pizza, you are not directly purchasing it. So, you are purchasing something else. What is that? That is in terms of different raw materials, right. And this example is the example of your household production approach, because households, they prefer for different things, but it is not actually their wish or preference to consume, and they produce it for having something final target or final consumptions, right. So, here the similar thing is happening. So, what is the similar thing you can say that we are needing the pure water quality, right, and the pure water quality is not available in the market, you cannot actually purchase it. That is why in order to get this pure water quality, what you are purchasing? You are purchasing some machines, that is RO AquaGuard, in order to have this water quality. So, that means you are revealing your preferences in terms of this purchasing behavior towards different raw materials, or towards right now in this example towards this machine. So, this reveal preference method, as you understand that it is also called the household production function approach, and it is a market based approach obviously. Here the impacts of the non-market goods are measured by observing the actual behavior of individuals. So, this actual behavior, that is in terms of purchases, are made in the actual market. So, although there is no market for water quality, but there is a market, actual market for these machines, so which help us in providing this water quality. So, therefore, from this example we can define this reveal preference method, that this reveal preference method is a method which determines the value that an individual holds for an environmental good or environmental services by simply observing the preferences or the purchase preferences of the goods and services in the market, and these purchase preferences are directly or indirectly, it is related to the environmental quality. So, here in our example this is the water quality. So, after having a discussion on the very meaning of reveal preferences, now we can just pose on the theoretical aspects of the reveal preferences. Is there any, is this method having any theoretical background, that is established theory or not? So, here as you understand that we are saying the reveal preference method, and this reveal preference method it is drawn from the reveal preference theory, which is propounded by P. A. Samuelson in 1938. So, what is this reveal preference theory which is propounded by Samuelson? So, this theory states that the preferences of individuals can be revealed by their purchasing behavior. So, the example is clear. The last example that we have discussed, the water quality and your RO AquaGuard, it states the same thing, that preferences of the individual consumers it can be revealed by their purchasing behavior. And here we are assuming the rest of the things, that is the ceteris paribus assumptions. Assuming other things to be concerned, we are only highlighting that preferences of the individual consumers can be rebuilt by purchasing the behavior. So, therefore, you can say this rebuild preference theory is an alternate approach to the theory of consumer behavior, right. So, in microeconomics you have already gone through that what is this theory of consumer behavior, right. So, how the consumer behaves in different situations, right. How the demand is, how the consumer is demanding for different goods and services. So, the theories like the cardinal utility approach, the ordinal utility approach. So, these are the approaches for the consumer behavior. So, in this context, when you are saying that P. Samuelson's rebuild preference theory, it is an alternate to the established theory of consumer behavior. Now, we can pose this question that which one would be the best indicator for consumers' preferences or demand for different goods and services, whether it is the utility approach, that the demand for goods and services, it depends on the utility it is going to provide for to the consumers, that is based on the logic of Jeremy Bentham's utilitarian approach. When a particular good, a consumer is saying that it is having some utility, right, that is why he is demanding or using this goods and services. Whether this is the factor behind this consumers behavior in the market, or it is the consumers purchasing behavior which is actually revealing the demand for these goods and services. So, you can decide that, you can analyze that which one which one of these approaches is the best indicator for these consumers preferences, whether it is the utilitarian approach or whether it is the rebuild preference method. So, now we will be having, after understanding this, now we will be having a broad picture of rebuild preference approaches. What are different methods we are having under this rebuild preference approaches? So, generally we do have this established 4 different kinds of rebuild preference method. One is the hedonic pricing method, second one is travel cost, the third one is averting behavior or averting expenditure, and sometimes it is also known as the defensive expenditure method, and the last one is known as the cost of illness. So, all these 4 types of method are under this rebuild preference method. So, what is the highlight? Obviously, we will be discussing each of these methods in detail, but the highlighting is that if you see because all these are kind of rebuild preferences, or they are actually revealing the behavior of the consumers and individuals. This hedonic pricing method, it is used in revealing the behavior of individuals or consumers in terms of property purchase, or in terms of searching a job, that whether a particular job is a riskier job or it is less risk, which one is to be preferred, the less risk job or the riskier job. So, again this hedonic pricing method, it is having this conceptual framework that is based on the concept that the demand for differentiated products. So, in property markets, let us say that how the consumers are revealing the behavior towards purchasing the property. So, obviously, we are having the case of differentiated products. What is differentiated products? The usefulness is same. If you have 2 different types of products, let us say 2 different types of property here, X1 property and X2 property. So, both these properties, they can serve the same purpose, that you will be having a property and you can have a house. Accordingly, you can build your own house. But the very nature of the properties may be different. There may be different attributes to this property. That is why it is dealing with differentiated products. So, this hedonic pricing method, it is typically applicable to the property value generally, or wage determinants. Nowadays, we do have some other applications of this hedonic pricing method that we will be discussing in this particular lecture, that is hedonic pricing method. And second method under this rebuild preference method is travel cost, and as you analyze under this rebuild behavior, that how this travel cost method is revealing the behavior of the consumers or individuals. So, it is revealed in terms of participation in the recreation or recreational activities towards a particular recreational sites, right. And again, so for the very conceptual framework is concerned, it is adapting to the household production, and we have already discussed what is household production approach, and it is not dealing with differentiated product, rather the complementary products. That will be discussing that how this travel cost is dealing with the complementary products. And generally when you seek for this these uses or application of this travel cost, it is generally applicable to the recreational demand in order to find this recreational demand of the consumers. The third approach of this rebuild preference method is known as the averting behavior approach, that is the defensive expenditure approach, where the preferences are revealed or behavior of individuals are revealed in terms of taking into account that what kind of different goods and services the consumers are purchasing in order to avoid the negative effects or any types of harms, or in order to actually take into account the importance of time costs. And so far this conceptual framework is concerned, it is taking into account the substitute goods, not complementary goods, and again it is also under the approach of household productions. So, for the application of this method, defensive expenditure method is concerned, it is applicable to the mortality and morbidity. So, far the health issues of individuals are concerned. And the last method under this rebuild preference method is the cause of illness. So, here the preferences or behavior are revealed in terms of treating the illness. So, it is based on the concept that how a particular individual is treating its illness and what amount of expenditures or costs he or she is incurring in treating the illness. So, again the application is that how in order to maintain the health, how the particular individual is spending, and it is related to the morbidity. So, that the particular person will be less prone to diseases. So, what are the advantages of this method? Once you understand the basic rebuild preference framework and rebuild preference methods, we can say that this rebuild preference models, that these 4 methods that is based on. So, it is based on the actual behavior. The consumers are displaying their actual behavior, whether it is for the health or in order to avoid the harm effect of XYZ environmental goods or environmental service or XYZ policy effects, and or it is the case that how the properties having different and differentiated attributes can be possessed. So, this is based on the actual behavior. So, when the models are based on actual behavior, then obviously the policy makers are more interested to use this method in order to have the solutions, in order to take into account the cost benefit of these environmental goods and services or policy aspects or projects aspects, and that is why it is very credible from the viewpoint of the policy makers. And the second advantages can be that this rebuild preference method, they are used generally in order to estimate the use value of the environmental goods and services. So, this is the benefits of rebuild preference methods in the non-market valuation approaches. So, what are the different limitations of this rebuild preference method? So, again from this merits we can find out the limitations or what are the shortcomings of the rebuild preference methods. So, what is that? When we are saying that in merits, we are saying that this rebuild preference method, it is especially applicable in estimating the use value. That means, it is not capable or it is not actually used for estimating the non-use values, and non-use value is also a part of your environmental values. Then how do you how to actually calculate non-use values? So, because you cannot actually apply this reveal preference method in order to measure this value. And another limitation can be that this reveal preference method, it cannot be used for values where the levels of the quality that is not experienced or it is not revealed in the market. So, without experience, without actual observations in the market scenario, this reveal preference method cannot be captured. So, these are the broad limitations of this reveal preference method, and we will be in detail discussing these 4 different types of reveal preference method in our discussions. So, as we discussed that under this non-market valuation approaches, we do have 2 approaches, 2 methods. One is revealed preference method that we have already discussed, and the second one is stated preference method. In case of revealed preference method, we do have a true market, right, actual market. Viewers are captured through the observation in the actual market. But in case of stated preference method, there is no such markets available, right. So, that means we are trying to have a hypothetical market scenarios in the for this goods and services, for this non-market goods and services, right. So, based on this non-market valuations approaches, as you understand that this is of 2 types. One is reveal preference method, which is known as the indirect approach, and this the second one is stated preference method, which is known as the direct approach. And under this reveal preference method, these are the 4 different types of methods that we will be dealing with. And under stated preference method, we are having this contingent valuation method and choice modeling approach. So, recently also the developed form of this stated preference method is your this one choice modeling approach, which is based on your choice experimentation also. So, for this non-market valuations, we are having these 2 broad type of approaches, and for more detail you can also follow these readings. These are the OECD readings for cost benefit analysis, and second is a kind of text you can use. This is the non-market valuations by these authors, right, and you can follow this chapter 8 in order to find out this reveal preference method only. Thank you very much.